Where are you from, Miss April?
I am from Huntington Beach, California.
And what's it like over there?
It's nice, times are changing, so I'm thinking about considering a move out of state just due to how the condition and things are right now here in Southern California. They're getting a little unusual, maybe due to the politics, I don't know.
And when did you see a significant change? Was it after COVID?
Um, yes, and I was kind of getting a little bit of a push in a way, just intuitively to start preparing to leave because my spirits asked me to leave and my guides asked me to leave before 2025, like no later than 2025. So it's been kind of like in my direct plans to kind of get out. So I knew that when they were telling me that I had needed to start preparing for a different adventure. I've been born and raised in California, so this is home. Right now, I'm located in Huntington Beach, but I've been kind of all over from Lakewood to Pasadena to Long Beach areas, stuff like that.
So when you say your spirits kind of give you this message, I mean, how do you interact with that aspect of yourself? Is it through the cards? Are you more of like a medium that like hears and sees? How are you interacting with them at this point in your spiritual journey?
It's a great question. You know, it comes from an inner knowing. So I feel like this is more about like my mediumship gifts. I wasn't doing tarot or shuffling cards in the moment that I was getting those downloads. I felt like it was more um, a feeling and just kind of like a whisper. It comes in an auditory form, or I get visions in my third eye. So I trust that. It's just something I can't shake. It's like a knowing. So and then I have a lot of prophetic dreams, so I know that sometimes um, I see the future and then like it'll happen. So I start writing down my dreams and stuff. So I've had a lot of intense dreams right before COVID hit about the future, and I started sharing my predictions and stuff online, and I started things just got a little more popular, and people were actually quite interested in what I had to say because a lot of the stuff I was saying was sort of unfolding before their eyes, and so. But going back to your question, yeah, it's time to go from California. Things are changing.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of intuitive mediumship, and I think that's one of the most fundamental forms to be able to grow upon. You know, at what age did you start noticing that you had this gift or that things were a little bit different about you?
I would say about the age of 8 years old. I couldn't sleep very well. I suffered from a lot of insomnia. And I would see spirits, pass by my door, and I could feel them, and I could see like movement and things like that. Although I wasn't getting a direct image of them, but I could see them with my own eyes. I could see like a change um, in my vision, and I didn't understand at the time what was happening to me. I was afraid to tell my mother at the time about what was going on and what I was seeing, so I kept it a secret. And I started picking up decks and books, things like that, because I felt intuitively I knew and understood like things like astrology and tarot, and I just couldn't quite shake it. And so I finally decided to kind of my grew up Catholic, um, I finally decided to open up to my mother, and thank goodness for the trust in that, where I had told her I kept seeing a man around her that was deceased. Um, my mom has been married twice, and so her first husband tragically passed, but it was like an unspoken rule in my house that we just don't talk about my mother's past or who she was married to or anything. Um, so I pulled her aside in a driveway, and I was between like, I was around 8 or something, and I said, Mom, um, there's a spirit of a man that I always see around you. And he's dressed like this in boots and jeans and a jacket. And he says that he remembers you when you're really young and used to wear this red and yellow bikini. And you guys used to go to the river a lot. And he watches over you. And she just looked at me, and her whole face just changed. And she looked absolutely shocked because I explained exactly detail for detail how she looked. And that was the first time I felt safe to open up because um, my mom believed me. And I would tell her, Mom, if you get into the car, like going further into the future, I'd say, be careful because you could get a ticket. And she'd get a ticket. So she was like my main support growing up as a kid because I think she knew I was a little different and I had these gifts. And we didn't know that it ran in the family because of the history. I know just by looking at me, you think okay, she's Caucasian, but I do have a lot of different types of roots. I'm pretty kind of mixed around a little bit. But there's a lot of history in my bloodlines that I found out later until after my mother passed about what happened. But there was a lot of stuff going on with war times and things like that, where my great grandmother was a medium and a tarot reader for a town in Germany. And the SS, not to bring up too much history, but the SS, which were the soldiers that belonged to Hitler and all that, were going to kind of pluck my great grandmother from her home. So she, at the time, had these gifts. So she kind of quieted them and offered them her services to kind of keep things quiet because they were trying to accuse her that she was not of pure race.
Wow. So now it's interesting you state that because, having studied World War II to a certain degree, and knowing that the Nazi Party actually delved quite a bit into the occult,
Yes,
I
true.
have to believe what you're saying. Now, ethnically, before I move further, what were you able to discover, after mom's passing and possibly doing some, ethnic investigations within yourself?
So I have Cherokee roots. They're on my father's side of the family. So my great grandmother is half Cherokee, and she was raped, um, or her mother was raped. Let me get this right. Her mother was raped by, uh, you know, somewhat like a white man, and then here I am. So the bloodlines just kind of grew. And then on my mother's side, she is German, Irish. But I believe from the papers that we have discovered that there were some hidden things that they were trying to protect my grandmother from from being killed. So her last name was Frank. So as you know, the Diary of Anne Frank. So they traced her diary back to, they went into her diary and stuff and traced her roots back to the French border, but they were pretty threatening. So they took my great aunt Sarah, which is my grandmother's sister. She was about 14 years old at the time. And they plucked her from the home as a threat to say, quote unquote, we're going to take her because she's slow. And they ended up taking her and euthanizing her. So because they thought she was slow, and this really upset my great uncle, which he got thrown into Dachau like three
Wow.
times for talking against the regime. Yeah, it's a big story. I found this all out after my mother passed. I had no idea how deep the roots went. But yes, my great grandmother, her last name was Frank, her name was Irna, and she was a medium for the town where she lived, and she read cards and she was able to read palms. And a long time ago, a Babalawo told me, he says, this runs in your family, what you do. And at the time, I didn't understand it until after my mother passed. My mother passed in 2019. And so in that understanding, I realize where it's coming from my ancestors and my roots. So I tend to my 𝗿𝗲𝗶𝗲 and my ancestors a lot to keep me going with my work too as well. So besides the saints.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, having, like I said, studied World War II, it being one of the points in history that probably emotionally the one that disturbed me the most, especially knowing places like Auschwitz and Dachau, and understanding what occurred there. That's really incredible stuff. Now, once again, my condolences for mom in 2019. Did you ever actually get a chance to speak to this grandmother that through the tarot, or did you ever hear about her otherwise? Were there any stories or anything, maybe from this great uncle or anything? I mean, truly a survival epic, especially being able to come out of that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet her. I didn't get a chance to have any dialogue with her. I mean, at the time, she actually died sometime after the war from cancer. And I never had a chance to meet her, but I've seen pictures of her. And my grandmother, who's now deceased, my mother's mother, um, she she had explained to me that she had that my eyes. She goes, "You don't have your mother's eyes. You don't have your father's eyes. You have my mother's eyes." And I seen a picture of her when I was about 14 years old. And when I saw this picture, I I honestly thought I was looking back at myself, that I was like almost like we were connected, and I felt a connection with her, even though we've never spoken. I've never met this woman, but my grandmother would always say I remind her of her mother. So it's quite interesting, the connection.
Wow. Now, astrology, it's such a popular topic now. There's so many people, expressing knowledge upon it, exchanging it. What could you say to the random person who comes to you and says, what is astrology? What's the best way you can answer that question for them?
Astrology to me is, it's a tool. It's incredible tool. It really has a lot to do with um, kind of like your past life. It gets into subjects of your shadow of yourself, and to the stronger parts of yourself. Brings up shortcomings. To me, it's another tool in the toolbox, of how to kind of get that screenshot constellation at the time of your birth. Because if you really think about it, there's a message at the time of your birth from your father and from your mother, which starts with the sun sign and the moon sign. So it's very interesting to kind of see, all the different points and transits and stuff in terms of planets, because cosmic weather is very well received, especially with millionaires too, because that's how they pick and choose when they're going to make decisions based on the cosmic weather, so to speak. Is this the right time? So they do seek out astrologers to really have a better sense of like what decisions to make, certain days for weddings, to pick for good luck and good omens. It's all connected the way I see it personally.
No, that's a beautiful discipline and beautiful concepts. I've heard of two schools because when people first hear about astrology, we think about the Greeks, but I actually was just put on to some knowledge that within Hinduism or the Indian Ayurvedic culture, there is another branch of astrology. Could you confirm or deny that?
Yes, that's true. So we have Western astrology, and then we have Vedic. So Vedic goes a little bit backwards for those that are watching that don't know. It goes backwards. So let's just say, depending upon the time you're born, let's just say you're a Taurus, then you go backwards, you'd be Aries. It goes a little bit backwards. So it's quite interesting to kind of see. And a lot of people will check that. And some people truly believe that it's actually more accurate than it would be, so much so for Western astrology. So
Now, someone who wants to get into astrology, someone who's interested in knowing what the cosmic weather or what their chart, I think it's called, is. What are those first steps like? Are they actually, how are you able to understand what was happening at that moment? Is there a database that we go into? Is certain preconceived notions? What's the first step in astrology, finding out who we are?
well, a lot of people use different applications. There's various ones all over the internet. So you can get into time passages or cafe astrology. There's just different applications. Everybody has a preference, but they're all fairly accurate for the most part. But it's most important that you have like the exact time when you're born, the right location when you're born. Some people don't even know. Um, but it's so common that it's hard not to find an application that would apply to finding out information so quick, so fast.
So, if there is an application that provides this information, a professional such as yourself, are you being contracted to interpret it for them?
I'm not sure I understand the question. You mean like through
Like,
that resource, or?
yeah, like for example, let's say someone has their coordinates, or forgive me, their information do they come to you to be able to develop like a chart out, or to be able to kind of like organize this information so that you can give them the messages they need?
Sure, absolutely. So let's just say someone books a reading with me and they are interested in a natal chart reading. So that's when I'll go in and look up their information due to birth, time, all of that, and I'll explain to them all their points, coordinates, transits, all of that, and also um, where it's like a screenshot constellation at the time of their birth. So where those planets are and those signs. And it does speak depending upon certain nodes, past life stuff. You can get into those things because there's a little bit of, there's the bones of it, and then there's the meat of it, as I see in every reading, whether you're using else. So it's quite interesting. Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. Now, another interesting part to me is, what is the training process like? Do you seek out a mentor? Is there a school? Is it a lot of independent study? What are some of the steps you had to go through to kind of end up where you are right now, where you're accepting clientele and, guiding people?
I have done some schooling on my own. You can do it online or someone that you very much trust. I mean, there's so much access to that. It's like overwhelming, how many people can teach and talk about this. So over the years, I just learned it through classes and through, other resources, people that are experts in these areas, where I was able to build upon that and learn more and be able to give more to my clients based on knowledge. I never feel that I'm somebody that is like an expert, but like more so I feel like I'm ever so learning. I always look at myself like a student because there's always so much astrology, and in regards to anything on all fronts in your life. It's like you can't just say, oh, I know everything. There's always something to learn. So that's the attitude I keep with astrology.
Awesome. Now, mind you, I'm in Aries, right? So I think that's within my Western calendar, but I think within the Ayurvedic one, whatever sign, forgive me, I should be more versed, but the one, I think it's Aquarius comes before Aries, depending.
Oh, that would be Pisces.
Pisces, yes, the fish, forgive me. So, just for the sake of conversation, what, cuz my birthday is March 31st.
Mhm.
So, like I've heard I have like Taurus elements based on, said moon, or, I have Aquarius elements, cuz they say I'm kind of on the border. Some of my situation possibly March 31st, Aries Western, what are some of the things, or pieces of advice you could possibly give me?
So, based on Western astrology for Aries, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac wheel. It does speak a lot about karmic adjustments based upon your birthing into this life, which means you're taking on a lot of the karma from your family, but you're here to shapeshift it and reset that. So whatever mistakes have been made or trials and tribulations and challenges prior to your birthing in your family, in your bloodlines from your ancestors, Aries is very, very important because they came here to really integrate and change and be the beacon of light for their family based upon their decisions and their boldness and their courage to say, you know what, that's great. My ancestors and my loved ones did this before, but I'm going to stand out. I'm going to be different. I'm going to do something different because my decisions are going to affect the generations thereafter me, including my children. So Aries is the one that really is the biggest. I feel like they're very important because they really do change the game for their family, because they're the ones that are the bolder ones, more courageous ones. Not to say or exclude any of the other ones if they don't have boldness or courage, but I'm further emphasizing the sign of Mars is to take charge and just say, you know what, I'm going to choose differently. I'm going to be differently, and my choices matter. And understand the power that they have and how to work with that energy of Mars to really change the family and the generations thereafter them. So they're incredibly important for adjusting that karma for their family because they are hitting the reset button literally for their family by their existence in this life, by what they choose to do that's different, that's better than the generations there before them.
Wow, that was very accurate, and I'll give you the confirmation right now. I pretty much did the complete opposite of what was expected of me. They do say that at some point we were interacting with 𝗃𝗏 in Cuba, but there was this huge gap in practice to where it ultimately culminated in me being where we're from and being exposed to it. But I completely went left, and being able to expose this to my family, and obviously my children are initiated, and be able to kind of realign us. That was quite accurate, and just the idea that it can be even more profound if someone was to book a session with you is really incredible. Now, my next question is that where are we able to get this information? And what I mean by that is, for example, you mentioned Mars, you mentioned the characteristics that are associated with certain positions and whatnot. Who were the first people to identify this? Was it that we looked at the characteristics of the planets and were able to interpret, hey, Mars, boldness, courage, trend-setting, pioneering, or how was it codified? When can we kind of look back and be like, who left this here for us?
Oh my gosh. You know, stuff comes up in like Greek mythology and just different things. It goes way back. I really wish I had a great answer for that. So I feel like it's been, the story with three wise men that they talk about in the Bible, the three wise men, and then when they went to go around Christmas time, the big story in the Bible where baby Jesus was born. Well, those three wise men brought frankincense, myrrh, and some gifts for this beautiful baby Jesus. Now, I don't mean to get into the subject of so I'm not so much interested in the religious backing of this as more so I'm interested in the story, because I got to thinking about this because I was born and raised Catholic, and I want to bring the story up because they were able to follow a star to find where this baby was at, baby Jesus. Okay. By following that star, they used astrology to find out where he is. That is my belief. Where this all derived from, I feel like it's very old, it's very ancient. There are gods and things like this. They talk about Mars and Venus, they represent, and a lot of it comes up in Greek mythology. So but I bring this story up because it's like the only way they would figure this out is through astrology and the stars. And they mapped out the stars. The Egyptians were really great at knowing they worshipped the stars, and then they were interpreted as gods. I believe the pyramids were aligned and set up, and they used the stars as like some kind of backing for their decisions and what they built and what they did and what they believed in. So there's this whole like back end of it, behind astrology, that I feel like it's so ancient that there's so much more to. That's why I always say I don't feel like I know everything. I never consider myself an expert, because every day I'm finding out something new. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. And then I would ask Spirit, guide me, show me more, give me more knowledge so I can better help my community and my friends and clients, because there's just so much to learn. I feel like we don't even know all of it. I think we have just like a surface knowledge of it, of how deep this really goes.
No, I share that concept completely. Within 𝗃𝗏, I'm learning something new every day. I'm studying harder now than I ever have. And the more I learn, the more I want to know. And, I don't think there is one culture or ancient culture that didn't delve into stargazing at some point. I mean, for lack of better entertainment, I mean, in the evening, you really didn't have much else to look at anyway, other than the beauty that was the night sky before we had all these, lights that kind of provide this fog that we can't see all this stuff sometimes. But 𝗃𝗏 was one of those cultures, definitely. I mean, the 𝗃𝗲𝗹𝗁 Baba was where the sun and the moon went to war, where the sun was actually, abusing his wife, the moon, and the stars, his daughters. And what they ended up deciding to do was divide space and the day between the both of them, where 12 hours were for the sun, 12 hours were for the moon. And people actually felt more comfortable staring at Mother Moon and seeking her and, the other siblings that were in the cosmos for advice. So all the way back to our first Odu, the King Odu, Baba Ifa, where the Big Bang happened and the great expansion of the cosmos, we can see evidences of this. And, recently I did my ancestry, where I came out with as a descendant of Mali, as well as the Dogon tribe, who were obviously recognized as actually discovering stars and having knowledge of stars before a lot of really advanced telescopes were even in place. And they said this knowledge came from the visitation that they experienced, thousands and thousands of years ago from, ancestral, universal visitors, right? So, Ifa, amongst others, I mean, like you said, the Egyptians, it's really what they were looking at. I ask you, what do you think astrology could do for society at whole? What benefits do you think people can get from delving into their ancestry within the universe and within space?
I feel that, there is such a thing. Like I brought up the term cosmic weather because it's true. Police even say that there's a lot of more crimes and stuff around the time when the full moon is nice and bright. So we are deeply affected. And, I always think about Yamaya and the moon because the moon pulls the tides up, you know what I mean? So it's all connected. So it's important to lean into it a little bit to have a better sense and understanding and more awareness of ourselves. Just like with the readings and the stories behind Ifa and the stuff that comes up when we get a certain sign. There's numbers involved. And if, when you think of Ifa, I noticed that they in the sand, they're putting their finger in the sand and writing ones, they're doing this, like they're counting. So if you really think about everything is ruled by degrees and certain planets and what they stand for, and a lot of people should integrate that a little bit more or be at least a little more vigilant about transits and stuff like that because it would better assist them for you know their success in business, their money. Also, geographic locations are very important, with astrology as well, where the lines can kind of track through certain parts of the world where they're living. Things like that. I mean, it's like you can't go wrong with another tool in your toolbox. I'm always open and receptive to different modalities because I feel like it gives me a much more panoramic view of the future, so I'm better prepared in terms of what moves I need to make. Now, going back to astrology and looking into your shortcomings, just like no different when you get a sign and getting a reading from your padrino or from a babala or whatever's going on, and they're like, hey, you're in Osobo, and you're like, oh my God, what do I need to do? So it's kind of like there's a light and dark to each placement in your natal chart. And so you have to palpate that and work through that based upon your choices and decisions. Like, let's just say, for Aries, for the sign of Aries, for you, ruled by Mars. So controlling your temper, keeping a cool and collected head, a lot of energy leaning into 𝗿𝗏𝗍𝗏 too for that, because you want to calm the mind, right? It's not a reactionary thing. And that's what shows how you build character and how you grow. So for someone like you, I can see how you can lean into a lot of 𝗿𝗏𝗍𝗏 to kind of calm the mind, because Aries rules the head, 𝗿𝗏𝗍𝗏 rules the head, because without the heart, the head means nothing. So, and the head carries the body. So, it's kind of interesting how you can merge a lot of this stuff. And I enjoy, as a daughter of Oshun, I've always enjoyed, the stories behind the numbers. I read through the books. And I enjoy like reading people's natal charts because I'm like, hey, I have this ability to help them and assist them. Because if you don't have the awareness of self, right, then how can you understand things and how to palpate those things and grow and build character if you don't know your shortcomings and your weaknesses and your strengths and how to build on that to reach those desired outcomes and goals, to integrate and really lean into your higher self, so to speak. It's all connected. It's a beautiful thing.
Definitely. And, I can confirm that, as a young man, It took a lot of polishing to get to the product that we present now within myself. A lot of thought, a lot of logic, a lot of analysis. And as we get older, we have to become a little less emotional and a little more methodical. I ask you, I heard about this concept recently, and you might be able to provide some clarity on it. Does divine geometry fall within astrology at all?
Divine geometry. No
And
one
it,
has
it, it,
ever asked me
it,
that
it,
question. Sorry.
No, it might not. I heard about it recently. I wasn't sure if it was because they were kind of explaining it to me as certain degrees, and it has to do with angels and things like that. But they kind of referenced the universe and space as well. But I wasn't sure if it was a part of the same thing. But my next question is, when did Ifa kind of come into your life, especially starting off with tarot and astrology? At what point was your first exposure to Ifa and Santeria?
Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful question. I'm so happy to answer that. And I don't mean to get emotional about this, but um, it happened all in one shot. So,
Wow.
um, so basically, what happened is I had a very big tragedy in my life where I lost someone very close to me. And
Sorry.
I had people, I was about 20, 24 years old, and I had some people that were um, very connected to Santeria, to Ifa, and I kind of landed in it by accident. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't know anything about Oshun. I didn't know anything about the saints. I didn't know anything about the religion at all. I just knew I was around it. I had seen like the statues, I had seen the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲s, I had seen like stuff out and altars, and I was like, what is all this stuff? But at the time, I was in a very, very bad place. And due to this loss and this tragedy, I really didn't see the point of living anymore. I was kind of in this space where I felt very defeated um, and very lost. And I had a friend of mine at the time that asked me to come to a house where all these 𝗷𝗶𝗍𝗍s were there and get a reading. And at the time, I was like so desperate and I was in such a bad place that I was open to just about anything at that point. But I was always very spiritual. So it wasn't like it's something that frightened me. I was just kind of curious. And so as I walked in the door, there was about maybe 6 or 7 𝗷𝗶𝗍𝗍s in this circle, and they asked me to come in and take my shoes off, and there was the mat and everything, and I sat down in Indian style, and there they started reading, and they were all dressed in white. And again, I didn't know. You have to understand, I literally didn't know nothing, like nothing. And right as I was doing the reading, in the middle of it, I heard all the 𝗷𝗶𝗍𝗍s at one time go, Oshun. And I was like, who's Oshun? Like, I don't know who this is. Like, who are you talking about? What's this? What is this? So, and then the 𝗷𝗶𝗍𝗍 leans over to me. And this was the moment that I realized how powerful Oshun was. Like, because there was some information that no one knew in my life except the person that was deceased at the time and myself. And that 𝗷𝗶𝗍𝗍 leaned over to me and he says to me, I want you to know that you're an original. Like, Oshun's been with you this whole entire time since you were in the belly of your mother. And I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know who this is. Like, I don't know who Oshun is. And then he had explained to me in the reading some information that was top secret. Like, I wouldn't share this with a soul. I kept it in my heart. So, and he told me Oshun was saying something that happened to me that was a really bad time in my life. And it was a mean thing that happened to me. I shared it with nobody. And I kept that pain in my heart. And Oshun said, somebody did this to you. And I got pretty upset, the 𝗷𝗶𝗍𝗍 was saying. And I started to cry. And it was like it was just this moment that I believed in whoever this was. There was no question in my mind that she was so real. And I looked over at all these guys that I didn't even know, and I felt this kinship. I felt this like community. I was like, I feel like I'm home. I feel like I've landed. And that was part of the sign, as it said that you're here. Like, Oshun led you here. and welcome home, like welcome back, like I'm with you. And so from that moment on, it was just go 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 from the time it took off. And I got initiated in 2006. I got the reading in about, I think it was like 2004ish, 5ish, somewhere in there. And I will never forget that moment. And that's when I became a believer and very interested. I started buying books and reading about Ifa and the stories, understand the signs. And I think at the time, I'm going to share this with you for all that are watching. It's quite interesting because at the time I got initiated, the diversity of different, you know, you know, oh my gosh, I can't think of the word right now. Sorry. Like from black, white to Asian, like it wasn't as like diverse as it is now in the religion, where now you're seeing like white, you're seeing Asian people. And at the time it was a little more not as fluent, I guess I would say.
Definitely.
So I kind of, but I'm open to, I have people that I read for all over the world. So like to me, culture is everything. I love it. So I'm not uncomfortable in settings and situations where I don't know how to survive. So at the time, it was a little more isolated. And then now from that time to this time to 2023, I can't believe how diverse it's become. And it makes me happy because people are really seeing the power and the beauty behind it too, as well. So, but that's how it all started. And that's the story. And I truly believe in my heart that Oshun has saved my life that day, because I was told that I didn't have much time, that it would have been something really bad would have come up. And Oshun says, I'm not going to allow that, because you have work to do here on earth. From the reading, the 𝗙𝗲𝗍𝗲s were telling me you have to help a lot of people. And now here I am in 2023 and I've helped thousands. So it's a beautiful thing. Oshun's my boss, I can't work without her.
No,
So
definitely. And, the yellow team is a very particular one. I pertain to it. My wife pertains to it. She's very particular with us. So now I ask you, you having now a priestesshood within this spirituality, and then apart from that, practicing astrology, how have you been able to kind of conjoin both of them to get the best results for your clientele? How have both of them been able to help each other, to help you, to help others?
I just, to me, I feel spirituality and working with the saints is a disciplined, it's like a ritualized routine. I get up in the morning, I work with Oshun, I work with the saints, I talk with them, I tend to my ancestors and my 𝗙𝗶𝗸𝗲 all the time. Um, I don't quite integrate it as much as I feel like I lean more into, because of the mediumship work, ancestors and spirit. I feel like that is like my strong point. But Oshun is kind of like my governor. The saints are like watching over me. The warriors are watching over me, kind of like my bouncers to kind of keep things nice. And so I can, they hold me up so I can continue to help people. But the mediumship part is part of in a way, some people call it a spiritist, or people that do a lot of misas. It's kind of like misa work, like stuff like that. I feel like each hour that I'm doing with a client, it feels like I'm sitting in on a misa, even though misa is like 2 hours. It's like an hour, and I just sit in, because at the time my padrino was telling me, he's like, you're like doing like misas. I'm like, I know. It's just like, what do you do? So I guess it's a combination of spirit and the protection and power of Oshun and the saints behind me, so they can kind of be like a bouncer for me, so everything goes okay, to better assist and help this client, because I represent them. So I try to be as honorable as I can to that individual.
Absolutely. Now, another thing that you mentioned earlier was the tarot, where it played a huge role in your first steps, and ultimately, your career, and the services you provide now. What are some of the decks you're using now at this stage? Which ones would you recommend to the beginners? Which ones, have really impacted you on your journey?
This is a great question, because I know a lot of people that use tarot have preference decks that they like to use, and that would be me too. Um, there are a lot of decks that you could use. There's oracle cards, which are very different. Um, Tarot is more, it's more intricate. To me, this tells the story, where oracle cards are more just like, boom, here's the message. I work with both. The deck that I like to use is no longer out there. They're not producing it anymore. It's by a lady named Doreen Virtue. She changed her belief system now, and she denounced all her work, but her work is amazing. It's called Angel Tarot, and it's my favorite deck, but they're not producing it anymore. So I have all the limited editions in my closet. I have copies of them.
Wow.
They had the Rider Waite. I think I'm saying that Rider Waite. Excuse me if I made a mistake. That one is the most common one. It's the more traditional one, and most people lean into that one and grab it. It's something I started off with when I first started doing my readings, but it didn't quite resonate with me as it did more of the saints, because the saints, the angel tarot, are very much a part of the tarot card itself. So they represent each card in tarot, kind of like similar to, like, with like Oshun and Shango, but like Archangel Michael's in there, just different angels that are correlated to each one of those cards. I love that deck, and no matter what anyone says, because Doreen Virtue, who designed the deck, who wrote for the deck, she denounced it, I forget when, maybe back in 2018 or something like this, and she completely committed herself to Jesus and Christianity, which was quite blindsiding to the people that were utilizing her decks and spending the money. I didn't care. I didn't judge her. I'm like, hey, if that's your thing, but her work is really good. Some of her books and stuff I like.
Yeah, one doesn't take away from the other. I mean, at the end of the day, art is art. A product is a product. Now, do you find yourself incorporating the astrology more into the tarot when you're using it, or do you also maintain those kind of in each of their own spaces? Because you're involved, you have quite a few licenses within spirituality. You have your priestesshood in Oshun, your astrological preparation, and also the tarot. So how does the tarot and astrology kind of interact for you?
It's very, very connected.
Okay.
So when, for instance, in tarot, we have, like, I'll use this as an example. So if someone comes to me and they're like, April, when am I going to get that job? I applied for it 3 months ago, and a client comes to me and says, I need to know the win factor. Like, can you tell me? And so I utilize tarot to get a duration of time, but I use it in zodiac seasons. So let's just say I pull the Hermit card. The Hermit card is Virgo. It's the sign of Virgo. So I immediately say to client, it looks like Spirit is saying that you will get this job in the duration of time of the sign of Virgo. So think of Virgo season, look at the dates. And then you start opening your calendar and you're like, okay, September, end of August leading to September. Virgo season starts August 23rd. So they'll know that Spirit is highlighting that for them, as to know when, and have a little more preparedness about when exactly they're going to get this job. Or, for instance, the Star card. Star card is the sign of Aquarius. A lot of the times I use tarot for birthings, or kind of leaning into, is this woman going to have a C-section? Is she going to have a vaginal delivery? And I'll be able to look at where the moon card is in tarot and what sign falls close to it. I can kind of see where the child, or when the child will be born, based on their moon sign. And that's how I know when the delivery is going to come. I can kind of map it out using the tool of tarot to get a better sense of when that time will be, because the moon will be close to, let's just say I pull the moon card, and then I pull the Hermit card, and I have a three, like I have like a like the Three of Wands or something. I'll know there's like a little bit of a wait or a pause. Moon means the moon will be in Virgo. So and that's how I'll map it out. And then I'll pull the moon calendar out on my phone. Okay, I think this baby is going to be born between this time and this time. It looks like, from the way tarot's showing me, that there might be, if I pull like a Three of Swords, I'll know that there will be a C-section cut, or there will be some kind of cutting. Swords means cutting. So that's how I utilize a lot of this stuff, to like find out times, durations, and the power of tarot is amazing, because it will definitely tell me a story as to what happened, including mysterious deaths. People will come to me and they're doing an investigation, and they'll say, hey, April, there's something mysterious about how this person passed. I will use tarot to better answer the question as to what happened to this soul. What is the truth behind their passing? and it will come through tarot to show me, and I'll get the images and I'll know through my third eye, get some auditory, and then look at the signs that come up through tarot. Numbers, things like that. Like, okay, I'm picking up on a 3 or a 2, you know, and I read in tens. So tens tell the story. So I'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll keep going and so on. I pause, then I talk. Then I pull another 10 until I get through the whole deck, and I shuffle again, and I do it all over again until I really get an understanding of what's going on. And what I do, I feel like my spirits and the saints behind me, what they do is we have a natural auric field around us that is, well, I call it the ancestral field that orbits around us. And when I go into people's fields as I'm reading, I'm able to pluck information from their field, their auric field, to understand health, or even their health, or what's going on with their cellular body. You can pick up on where the weaknesses are in their chakra point. So it's really a wonderful and powerful tool to utilize to offer clients, to give them a better gist of what they need to work on, preparedness, dates, you know, the do's, the don'ts, the warnings. And it's kind of no different than getting a reading through your padrino. Like, you know, you kind of want to know, hey, what do I need to kind of fix this up? And am I in Ide? And am I in Osobo? So tarot and that tool, spirit's advice through that tool, we found another way around it to better assist and answer questions very quickly and give them the immediate answer they're looking for. Sometimes there is no right or wrong answer. It's kind of like what we choose, because we have free will too. That's a lot of people don't realize that. Sometimes there's no right or wrong answer. So it's just kind of what we choose and what we make of it. Yeah.
Definitely. Now, let's say there's a young lady out there kind of in the same situation you were in, 8 years old, 10 years old, 14 years old, who's noticing they have gifts, who's beginning to hear about these different disciplines and whatnot, and, you know, being interested. What advice would you give to someone who wants to get involved in astrology moving forward, especially with the current climate that, you know, this spirituality is in? What advice would you give to them?
I would advise them to begin with good spiritual hygiene first and foremost, working with their ancestors, because you really want to make sure you have a good foundation and a relationship with them, and you want the protection to start exercising those gifts, because the protection is what moves the other things out of the way. Because the more spiritual you become, the more you can attract, even in negative energy, or pick up from people's junk or their filth, their energy, especially when they have those gifts and they're opening up more, you absorb more. So spiritual hygiene by far is the number one foundation, and also working with your spirits. You have to develop a very good relationship with them, because they're going to provide you that protection and discernment, and you can be a better help and assistance to other people around you. But if you're not cleansing yourself often, if you're not doing that often, you can take on other people's stuff, and it becomes harder and harder to feel good or to get the right answer, because it's all this muddled down information. And that's one of the things, I only share this because this is one of the things I've learned, that you can't get lazy on your spiritual hygiene, because it will affect you and it will affect you. But if they have those gifts, they have to start with good spiritual hygiene, because they have it for a reason. And so that means they're more open. If you're more open, guess what? You're more open, the more things come in. And that's not always good, because there's some things we don't want to come in. You know, we want to get all that stuff out of the way.
No, definitely great advice. I think cleanliness is close to godliness. And we have to protect ourselves, because, you know, when we are spiritual professionals and we're delving into each other's space and third eyes and chakras and energies, there's an exchange that occurs there, and sometimes you can get more than you expect or want. April, really fabulous conversation. I have to ask you, what's next for you? Please let us know, you know, what your next projects are, how people can get in contact with you or in touch with you, and as well, you know, final words for our communities at large.
Thank you. Wow, there's a lot going on. I got a podcast coming out. I'm really excited about
Nice.
that. So it's called it's almost there. It's through Australians. The name Australians comes from my spirit. So for those that are asking, why do you have that name? That was just something my spirits gave me. And they said, this is the name we're representing ourselves when we work with you and work through you. I was like, okay. But I have Australians where it's teaching, talk, astrology, truth, tarot. And then I have a subdivision coming out called conspiracies. So it's like conspiracies, but it's CON spirit and the word sees, which I will be doing celebrity psychic readings on mysterious deaths, the predictions for what's to come for the United States, what my spirits have to say about what we need to prepare for. If you're easily triggered, I don't recommend that subdivision because spirit doesn't really have an interest in anyone's opinions, more so they're interested in the truth because spirit only speaks in truth.
Correct.
But if there's something that needs to be said about the politicians that are going out there, it will be said. So they don't see the black, or they don't see the red and the blue and the stuff that the ego creates here in this world and society. It's all separate from that. So it's kind of beautiful to see what they have to say. So we have a gist of what's going on. A lot of these celebrities are passing away, quote unquote, from suicides and things like that. And a lot of people are like, that sounds interesting. And I'm not sure if that's really what happened. It's quite interesting to see what comes up, what spirit has to say. And sometimes it's quite the opposite of what they're claiming in the media that happened. And so I do these live raw readings. So there's no interruption, there's no editing, and there's no censorship. So you get all of it the way it is. And I check out for a little bit. April's no longer there. It's just about what it is and what they have to say. So I have 2 of those podcasts coming out. I have Austrian Subdivision Conspiracies coming out this Libra season. So hopefully people will catch that on a lot of Instagram stories I'll be posting. And then also I have a deck coming out, an oracle deck. It's 2 decks that are combined as a package. So I've been working on this since about 2020. And my spirits didn't want me to work with Chinese printers for some reason back then. And now look at the stuff that's going on right now in the world with China. China's not getting back to American artists, by the way, for those that are watching. So one of my artists that's working with the deck, she went back to message China because it's cheaper to print in China. And my spirit said, we don't want anything to do with that. We want American flag on the back of our deck. I was like, well, that's a pretty strong request. And I knew they said it for a reason. So a lot of the deck was postponed until now. So right now I'm working on that. So the deck and the 2 podcasts, Subdivision Conspiracies. So that's what I got coming up. And for those that are watching that are interested in tarot and astrology and things like that, to me, the message I have is just, these are all just tools to bring that awareness to yourself and utilize those tools to be the best version of yourself, to have more awareness of your shortcomings and your weaknesses. No different what led you to come to the religion for Santeria or Ifa. You seek the truth, you come for the truth. And that's what these tools are about, is to bring you back to yourself and remember your power and who you are. And if you want the truth, by God, they're there, but these are just tools to use as you build your spirit up and build your soul up and you grow and evolve.
Well, April, needless to say, thank you so much for the interaction, the conversation. I think some great things were, relayed here as far as your ancestry, as well as you clarifying so much about astrology for, our community. And, we can't wait to see all the things that you have coming out. And guys, please be sure to check in the description to get in contact with April for readings, consultation, charts, etc. Be on the lookout for her podcast and can't wait to see that deck.
Yes, and guys, we got some shout outs.
Awesome. We got some shout outs for our members.
Here's
Perfect.
the harp. There we go.
Oh,
all
fabulous.
Right. All right, before we get out of here, we got some shout outs. We got some VIP shout outs. Shout out to Kathy.
Kathy, bendiciones.
6 months. All right, we got shout out to Jada Rocks.
Jada, thank you.
Shout out to Alyssa Statler.
Yay, Alyssa.
Shout out to Jewel.
Jewel.
And here we go to the super fan shout outs. We got Anna Rodriguez for 6 months.
Anna, thank you.
We got Joaquin Mendez for 6 months.
Bendiciones, mijao.
And another 6-month shout out to Kenya Hutton. So make sure you guys join our membership for extra content.
share the channel, guys. Like, subscribe, comment, let people know about the membership program. And until next time, see the light.